welcome to yet another episode. Today we are going to have a very interesting conversation that surrounds our teenagers. Dear parents, we want to talk about sleepovers. In this video, we are going to focus on the disadvantages. Please watch our video up to the end. On my left hand side, I have Madam Priska. On my right hand side, I have Madam Mora. So we are going to start our discussion with Madam Priska. Please, Madam, welcome.
Okay, thank you for welcoming me to this discussion. Now, sleepovers. When we look at sleepovers, then I just see crime. If you look at many documentaries, whether they are American and even our own Kenyan situations, you find that many youth and teenagers, for that case, when they go to the sleepovers, they have that opportunity because they are far from parents, and they know they have that chance away from adults who are supposed to be monitoring and maybe controlling what they are doing. So you'll find that most of the teenagers engage in situations like gang activities, and when there are many of them, they are prone to, sometimes they may even plan to attack somebody who might not be their friend. So get experiences of murder. They may tend to kill one of them. I've ever seen a situation whereby young girls met someone and they had been annoyed by one of them. And so during a sleepover, they said, we must do something to teach her a lesson. And so at the end of the day, they dragged this girl and they beat her. And at the end of it, she was dead. So they were, at the end of it, they were really surprised at what they have done. But they had done it.
Sure.
Yeah. You can also find situations of kidnapping in this situation because now these kids are away from our, the security we provided for them as parents. Now, once they are away, people are out there and people are on different missions. You can see there are people who are hunting for organs. There are those who want like slave girls. And we have so many other activities going on in the country. So once the girls go out there, some people will track them and they know they have left their home. Sometimes they'll even await the meeting point for these girls, and what will happen is that you will end up losing your daughter and you'll never see them again. Yeah, and I think there's something you shared with me about this kidnapping situation, a particular example.
Yeah, so I remember there's a time I watched one of the documentaries. There's a guy who had gone for a sleepover. So, and this is why sometimes I find it hard just to allow my own children or nephews to go for sleepovers. So when this girl went there, in the process, the mother to her friend slept at around midnight. And then these two teenagers were left there, catching up, watching movies and all that. And then this girl who had gone for a sleepover, she went outside the house and she was kidnapped. So you can imagine all the stress that these particular people underwent. So when she was kidnapped, she was raped and then killed. And then her body was just thrown somewhere. And you can imagine this was an innocent girl who had gone out just for a normal sleepover, to have fun with her peer and all that. But she ended up dying. And you can imagine the parents losing a child. And that is why sometimes I find sleepovers not to be okay. So I don't know, what do you think about the same on crime?
Okay, I can say that during sleepovers, there's always a possibility of reckless behaviors. It comes out all the time. And the reason is because teenagers have been put together. Now, like we usually say on this discussion of ours, teenagers are simply adults, they're simply children who are in adults' bodies. That means that they cannot make the correct rational decisions at all the time. So you find that they're easily swayed and influenced into different crime activities. I think I was also walking on the streets of Nairobi one day and I just saw a gang of teenagers just pouncing on somebody and ripping them of everything they had, and just moving from one person to another. And you can actually see that spirit, and that it had been nurtured from somewhere because of the kind of teamwork that they had and things like that. So I'd say that sleepovers could, in a way, produce a chance for people to engage, for teenagers to engage in crimes. And also they are in a group, which means there's that strength of numbers. They can do anything. They can hide under each other's identities and things like that.
So they are so excited. And sometimes even they don't think about the repercussions.
They don't.
They are themselves. There are situations like exactly again in one of the estates in Nairobi. You find that this is the time a girl wants to see, can I really cock a pistol? And one of my nephews was telling me that he was really surprised. He was very young, by the way, and at an age of about 9, he had a boy that lived in his neighborhood, and the boy knew how to cock a pistol, and the rest of the boys could just dare him. They could tell him, go at home, bring us some money. Like if this boy learns to steal from the parent and bring some money, then that means he's really getting to the system. So during sleepover, of course, that is when they'll teach them how to cock this pistol, how you can even kill, and maybe how you can rape, and how you can handle other adults, and even those funny behaviors that you would not want in the society. So sleepovers, that is a topic that really needs a lot of discussion.
Wow.
Yeah, it's true.
So we agree that as parents we need to be very vigilant. Like, if it's not that important, just let your teenagers stay at home, because once they're out there, you can imagine what they teach each other. So the other disadvantage of sleepover that I would wish us to hold a discussion on is on exposure to sex. So most of the teenagers, from statistics, it shows that most teenagers learned the art of sex through sleepovers. It contributes a lot. So sometimes as a parent, you may think that your daughter, let me start with daughters. You may think that your daughter is innocently going to her friend's house, just to pass the night or stay there for 2 or 3 days. But the truth is, your daughter could be a lesbian. I don't know whether that has ever crossed your mind. We've had such a case. I know of a girl, 2 girls that were in the same school, and they were both lesbians, and they had met their parents to become friends. So each time they would just go visit each other, spend the night there. And the parents were very innocent. Like they thought that, hii ni kawaida too, like it's normal. But the truth is, these girls were lesbians, and they would spend the whole night together doing their own stuff. During the day when the parents were not around, they would do their own stuff. So as a parent, you should be very careful when it comes to sleepovers. Chances are it may expose your child to sexual activities like lesbianism, homosexuality, or just the other kind of sexes. So I don't know what you can say about that.
I think there's something I heard about the orgies, and this is the time when I've ever experienced a situation where when girls finish high school and boys, and they want to say, school is over. So what do? Some of them now decide to have a sleepover, not at the friend's place, but they hire a room. It might be a deserted room that has never been used, and they know the owner doesn't really mind how it will be used. So there's a town where I saw schoolgirls and boys, about 50 of them, imagine, schoolboys and girls, and they hired this room they used for 3 days. You can imagine what was going on. By the time the police reached that room, there was all rot, drugs in there, and all sorts of drugs, and these girls, you can imagine, they are having sex with multiple partners, and so infections are prone to come, and pregnancies that are unwanted, and all sorts of situations that you wouldn't wish to have as a parent. I don't know, have you ever heard of such things as orgy?
Orgy. So maybe to a parent who is watching out there is wondering what orgy is. So I think in a layman's language, you can say that is group sex, where you can find like 5 people engaging in sexual activity at the same time. So I've heard and I've seen this, and I always say there are advantages that comes with being a teacher, because, and especially a high school teacher, you have a lot of information, because we handle teenagers. So I know of a school where girls and boys had a party, and this party was held at night, and these girls and boys ended up having group sex. They say it is called what? Dare and Truth and Dare.
Yeah.
So Truth and Dare. And there's a girl who was asked to pick a piece of paper, and the piece of paper, there's something that was written, and so you just pick, then read what is on the paper and do whatever you've been instructed. So this girl was the instructions were for her to sleep with 4 boys, to have sexual intercourse with 4 boys. And because this is a teenager, she wants to please her peers and all that.
Prove it.
Yeah, she wants to prove. Do you know that girl slept with 4 boys at a go? And that is during a sleepover. So you can imagine how sad it is to such a girl. 4 boys without protection. This is a person who is exposing herself to diseases, STIs, STDs, HIV, name them all.
The emotional trauma.
And then the emotional trauma that comes with it.
Yeah.
So this is something that is very common, and because teenagers want to please their peers, they'll always go for dare, and they'll dare and they'll do. And then remember, so that you understand here what we are talking about, as they were engaging in these sexual activities, the other teenagers were also standing there and watching.
Yeah.
And eventually everyone in the room, started having sex. So that is how sad it is. So I don't know what you can say around this.
Well, around that, I can maybe just add another thing that comes with the, engaging in in sexual activities, and that is the issue of pornography. Now, when you talk about teenagers sitting somewhere, sometimes they may not actually be engaging in the physical sexual activities, but they do watch what is being, what is out there on social media and other platforms, and they get to, to see what is going on. Now, pornography, as we all know, is very addictive, and pornography can actually, derail the mind of a person as they get, to learn so many things. I remember I heard of a case, I think it was on BBC, of a boy who engaged in, pornography and all those activities until he actually ended up with a heart attack at the end. I think he did the sexual activity 56 times just by sitting there and being stimulated by pornography. So again, the parents should be able to know that when you talk about sexual activities, you're not talking about the physical. There's actually the aspect of seeing what other people are doing on social media. And then when you talk about teenagers, they're all about experimenting and learning and doing what they're seeing other people do. So you can imagine that your teenager, who's actually a small child, sees some funny sexual style that I don't know, you're supposed to bend backwards and whatever, and goes do it. Sometimes they even die. Sometimes they can even get, some actual physical injuries. So again, another thing that your parents are supposed to look out for is the issue of pornography, which is nowadays, I think it's everywhere. On any social media platform you go to, you can actually be able to see that. So again, that is another effect of having that unmonitored sleepovers at all the time.
So I love how the conversation is going on. Dear parent, I hope you're learning a lot. Please drop a comment in the comment section. What do you think about this discussion? Welcome, Madam Mora.
Very well. So another challenge that we can talk about when it comes to youth and sleepovers is the issue of culticism. Now, when you talk about cults, I know for some of the parents out there, they do not believe that we have cults and culticism and witchcraft and other disoriented religious beliefs going on. However, I just want to point out that we have them, and if you don't believe it, you can look at the history of Kenya. Starting from this person who came up with the Shakahola and the Shakahola stories, where people were, I think, starving to death so that they can actually meet God. That already is a funny religious disorientation. And from that, I think the government actually came up with ways of vetting churches to see which churches were actually, doing the right thing as, according to the laws of worship that have been laid out in our country. And so much information came out. I don't know whether you people heard of it. Personally, there were these 2 churches that stood out for me. One of them where this pastor, I don't remember his name, actually founded a church where you go in totally naked. So when you get to the door, you strip off your clothes and you get into the church naked. And I don't know how that actually happens, but according to this person, that you're supposed to worship God in the original way that Adam and Eve did it. Now we remember from the Bible, Adam and Eve were actually naked in the Garden of Eden until a certain point when they ate the fruit, and then I don't know what happened, and their eyes were opened and they could see that they were naked. So before that, they were actually naked, and that's what the pastor was basing his whole church belief system on. So people go to that church totally naked. And then I also heard of this other church where the pastor had to kiss away your sins or something like that. So you go to church and you confess your sins, and depending on the mightiness of your sins, it determines the mightiness of the kiss.
So I'm just trying to imagine, like, really?
Imagine that the pastor is going to give you.
Yeah, that's
So-
their topic for another day. by the
Yeah,
way.
so he was actually kissing somebody for over an hour,
Oh.
depending on what you feel that you've done or something like that. So those are examples of cults, because we know from the Bible that things like those are not supposed to exist. And then of course there's always this traditional one, I think we call it black magic. That is the witchcraft and behaviors like that.
With
They're also
rituals.
rituals, initiations and all that.
Yeah.
They're part of cults. And then there's this one that is, I think, is actually very common. It is actually called blood ties.
Yeah.
Now, when you talk about blood ties, sometimes the children do it even very, very innocently. They don't know. So you find that 2-3 children are gathered in a place, and they're like, how do we bind our friendship? Let me cut myself and you cut yourself, and then we mix our blood. I don't know. By doing that, they're actually, coming up with something. It is a type of covenant.
Like an oath.
Yeah, it's like an oath. And now when that thing goes and breaks up, the things that you had said you're not going to do might actually come back to haunt you. So we have those, we have the beliefs in Satan and Satanism. We've heard of all these religions. I think Illuminati should be one of them, Freemason, and so many other things. So when your child goes into a sleepover, these things are actually a real possibility. They can actually be initiated into these funny religious orientations, and in the end, you're going to actually find them going so deep into them, it becomes very difficult for you to get them out of it. And these days, I hear it is as simple as sharing a sweet,
Yeah. Necklaces.
Yeah, I remember there was a girl who, in a school I was, who just showed up in school with a few necklaces, an anklet, and she had these very tiny shorts. What are they called? I think
big,
tiger shorts.
shorts.
And bikini
Or the
shorts.
bikini, yeah.
The
Yeah,
bikini.
very tiny shorts. So this girl actually used to hire those items
Yeah.
to a person for a period of time. So you give them like 20 shillings, and then they give you the to Taira shorts and the to crop tops and the to earrings, and for a teenage girl you feel so nice. But people used to complain, but by the time you were taking them back, you could actually remain with a backlog of people now haunting you. You could hear voices, you could see yourself in the presence of funny funny situations, funny altars. You could do things that you actually can't remember doing. It's like something is pushing you into them. So those are the kinds of things that our teenagers are being initiated into. So when your child goes for a sleepover, I think they should already be warned about these kinds of cults and existences. This I think we can just call them devilish existence when on earth. And you should actually watch out for it. So when a child goes out, watch out for those things when they're coming back. They have funny necklaces. I think you've seen them even being sold on the streets.
Yeah.
You find like a necklace with I think
snake kind
a
of.
snake, I think a lion, or I think some funny head looking thing, where they are supposed to have the pendant, then some two bracelets that you cannot, explain how they look like, and then after some time you find your child is actually behaving out of norm. You can find, I think we had one in a school where I learned, who used to boil textbooks and drink the water.
Oh my God.
And she used to say that by doing that, she could actually grasp all the knowledge, so she didn't have to read. And she was doing well. She was actually doing well. She was leading.
That one must have been indoctrinated some cults.
Yeah,
because that is not practical.
It's not. So you wonder, how did this child get into this? You find, sometimes now you find your child is actually speaking in some form of dialect. You cannot explain. It's like a chord. You find them praying in a funny way, behaving in a manner that is not right. I think we handled a case in this school where a child could actually lift a dining table. When those things attacked, she said she had supernatural powers. So she could actually lift even a cupboard and hurl it at the mother. And the mother was like, how come, what is going on? And then on interrogating the child, they say that they had gotten themselves into, such kinds of practices that
after
were not,
sleepover.
Yeah, after the sleepover, after they have gone to their friends' houses and, interacted with their fellow teenagers. So that's something else that I think our children, we as parents should look out for when our children go for sleepovers.
And just to add on that, I think this issue on necklaces and what are they called, ring fingers, it's so common, and especially in boarding schools. So it's very, very common. I've seen in schools that have taught a student, almost the same case like yours. There's a student who bought those necklaces, what are they called? They're confusing.
Rings?
Yeah, the rings, and then bracelets. And when she came to school, she gave those presents to specific students. So you can imagine that is how those students that were given were gradually started getting into a cult. Just a journey to a cult. So dear parent, be very careful when you see your daughter or your son having those specific items. Just question them where they got from, because it is your duty and your responsibility to ensure that you guard this teenager. What could be the other issue?
I think the thing that we have not discussed is sleep deprivation. You understand we have insomnia and so many other conditions that come with the lack of sleep. Now, if your child goes for many sleepovers, obviously they'll have sleep deprivation. And if you lack sleep, then you will not function during the day. You might find this child will not even now behave normally. And if they are supposed to take charge of normal activities or even driving, then they are prone to cause accidents or fail to function as we expect. Just like it happens to anybody who does not sleep enough.
And then I think I read somewhere, after your teenager comes from a sleepover, if you observe that they are sleeping a lot, like, there's that normal sleep because of, maybe sleeping late and all that is normal. But if you realize like there's a pattern that they are developing in that they want to sleep a lot, then there's something wrong must have happened during the sleepover. So it is up to you to find out the reason, because you need to be vigilant. As we always say, you are the primary caregiver of your children, and therefore you should take up your responsibility. So I don't know, what is your parting shot?
Well, personally, I'd say that, first of all, if you've not investigated what your child is going to do in that sleepover, and if you're not sure what exactly could, happen in the course of that sleepover, just stay at home. Sleep with your child at home. That it minimizes a lot of risks that comes with the sending your child out to the sleepover. Of course, I know we'll do follow-up videos and we'll talk about the advantages. But when you look at the disadvantages specifically, I'd advise that if you're not sure, just don't let your child go into that, because you don't want to deal with the consequences that come up later.
Sure. Priska, your parting shot.
So I would just tell you, parents, be on the watch. And sleepovers, if you don't see the merits, if you don't understand what they are, and if you can listen to the disadvantages we've shared, then make a wise decision as a parent and even as a child, because we are talking to you teenagers too. Do not insist on something that will destroy your life. You have a whole world to live for, so do not destroy your future.
Yeah.
Wow. So I hope, my dear parents, you're in agreement. As a paranoid parent, I always say I'm paranoid. Sleepovers is a no, unless it is a must. I don't know what the emergency could be, but if it's not a must, then just stay at home. Friendship can be celebrated in so many ways. They can spend a day together under strict observation or under the care of someone that is a bit older than them. But if you see your teenager or realize that they are emphasizing on sleepovers, find out the reason. Because one bed is equal to another bed. So I don't see the necessity. Please watch out for the second part. We are going to do a video where we will focus on the solution. Check out for our second video. We are going to do a whole video on the solutions and the advantages of sleepovers. From us to you, goodbye.
Goodbye. See you.
See you.